Good morning and welcome to your daily solo 401k webinar Q&A session with my solo 401k financial, where we help you to stop overpaying taxes and start building real retirement wealth. Today's topic is how to open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 so that you can still make employer profit sharing contributions for tax year 2025. So most self-employed individuals have already set up a plan as of the end of December of 2025 for making year 2025 contributions. However, those that were too busy, the good news is that you still have time to open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 by the business tax return due date, including timely filed extension, so that you can make tax year 2025 employer contributions. And even though today's webinar is honing in mainly on employer contributions, it's also worth noting that voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions also follow these same rules. That is, if you did not open a solo 401k plan by December 31st of last year, so 2025, you actually still have time here in 2026 to open the solo 401k plan and make year 2025 voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. And we actually presented on that topic, the mega backdoor Roth, how you can still do that strategy by opening a solo 401k plan in 2026 for tax year 2025. We did that webinar earlier this week. So if you visit our YouTube channel, you can subscribe and you can view that past webinar as well as over 1,100 other webinars that we've performed over the years. It's free to join. Please also like us on the various social platforms. Subscribing also guarantees that you receive notices of when we go live. We try to go live at least once a day. Just depends how busy we are and during the time of the year. And also, oftentimes we go live twice a day. Once here at 10 a.m. Pacific time and a second time at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So this is your chance. That's why we have these daily webinars. Number one, to cover certain important topics based on the time of the year. And number two, so whether you're an existing client or a prospective client or just an individual that's really interested in learning about solo 401k plans, we use these live sessions to answer questions. So go ahead and type those questions over so that we can be sure to get to them all. And then we'll go over those questions as they come in. All right, let's continue here. So again, we're talking about how to open a solo 401k plan in 2026 so that you can still make employer contributions for tax year 2025. Of course, if you've already set up the plan by December 31st of 2025, then you have already preserved the right to make all contribution types to the solo 401k plan for tax year 2025 here in 2026. That's employee contributions, employer contributions, and voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. But for those who are, again, we're too busy over the holidays to take care of their own plan because you're self-employed and you were busy taking care of others' needs. The good news is that you can still open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 and make employer contributions for tax year 2025. So we're going to go over that. So if you think it's too late to fund the solo 401k for 2025, once the calendar has flipped to tax year 2026, then the answer is no, it's not too late for certain types of contributions. So if you had self-employment income in 2025, this may still apply to you, even though it's now 2026. So the big misconception is that most people believe this myth. If I didn't open my solo 401k by December 31st of 2025, I've missed my chance. That's only partially true. That only applies to employee contributions if it's a sole proprietor, if it's a partnership or an S corporation. If it's a sole proprietorship and you open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 for the first time, you're actually going to be able to make all contribution types, employee, employer, and voluntary after-tax contributions by April 15. You'll need to open the solo 401k plan by April 15 of 2026. If you're a sole proprietorship or an LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship, if you want to be able to make employee contributions for tax year 2025. If you open it after April 15, then you can only make employer contributions and voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions for tax year 2025. Okay, it looks like we've got a couple questions here. Let's take a look at that here. Okay, so I'm an advisor looking to get a new 401k plan set up and manage the accounts for the client. Well, we do have a lot of institutional clients, so we definitely can probably assist you. As a matter of fact, the majority of our business is on the institutional side, and of course, we do service the retail side. When I go to the link on your website, I insert the client information, correct? That's exactly right. Under the open account page, you're going to complete that online application like you're the client. That is, you're the participant trustee of the plan. You're the self-employed individual. So you'll go ahead and fill out that form, that online form accordingly, as if you're the one opening the plan. And then what you want to do at the very end is include your name and your email address on the very last question. Simply state on there, please copy advisor. You'll list your name and your email address. That's how we know that this is for an advisor client. And that's going to prompt us to copy you on all communications, both at the opening process, including sending an email to the client and copying you, asking the client to make payment for the setup fee, to when we send a download link of the plan establishment documents, to when we obtain the employer identification number for the solo 401k, continuing when we prepare the applicable institutional brokerage forms. Many advisors that use our solo 401k platform clear through Fidelity Institutional, Schwab Institutional, Altruist, their own broker dealer that they clear through. That's one of the advantages of using my solo 401k financial on the institutional side, or even on the retail side, is that you, as the advisor, in conjunction with your client, choose where to hold the money at. We actually are not a depository taking institution. We are not advisors. We are not providing investment advice. We don't sell investments. We stick to what we do best, and that is be a solo 401k plan document provider and handle compliance reporting for the solo 401k plan. And we'll touch more on that as we continue with today's webinar. So as far as the rest of your question, it looks like you're cleared through Fidelity. So we'll actually prepare those Fidelity institutional brokerage forms for you and the client, for the client's signature, and then you can submit those directly to Fidelity on the institutional side. So we'll pre-fill out all the information put the packet together along with the solo 401k plan documents, provide instructions on where to sign, and then you submit them through your back channel to Fidelity. Fidelity will send you and the client an email once those accounts have been opened. And then when it's time to fund those accounts, we'll be here to help you run calculations, contribution calculations, and then handle any type of Form 1099-R reporting for conversions, Form 5500 easy for informational reporting, all those all that type of reporting, which again I'll touch on more later during today's session. That's all covered in our annual fee. We don't charge extra for those services, and we file those electronically with the government. And as long as you timely request those returns, we'll handle those at no additional charge. So great question. And lastly, we actually did a webinar yesterday geared towards institutional advisors that want to open up a solo 401k plan. Let me see if I can dig that up here and I'll share it. So you can take a look at that. We broke down the whole process really nicely. Here we go. Let me share the link with you. So take a look at this link here that has a live webinar that we put on yesterday. Even though it's talking more about the mega backdoor Roth, it can also be applied just to the general setup process. So yes, hopefully that takes care of your question. Okay, let's see if we have some other questions here. Looks like we've got a question here from Jason. If my goal is to maximize contributions to the voluntary after-tax account so as to maximize the Roth part and also roll the money into a Roth IRA, am I required to contribute anything, even $1, to the employee contribution bucket? No, you're not. You can solely make voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions up to the overall limit, which is $70,000 for tax year 2025, and it's $72,000 for tax year 2026. And we see that occur commonly with a lot of high earners. For example, we have a lot of professional clients, such as physicians, attorneys, CPAs, where they work for a full-time employer company and they participate in that full-time employer's 401k and they max out those contributions. And then they have a side business. So they open up a solo 401k plan for that side business. And as long as they have enough earned income from self-employment activity from that side business, they'll go ahead and treat the entire annual contribution allowed under that solo 401k as a voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution. So $70,000 for tax year 2025, for example, and then they'll immediately convert that to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA. So, for example, if you have a side self-employed business and you maximize your daytime employer 401k as well, voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions, just like employer contributions, are not impacted by contributions that you make to your daytime employer 401k. So if you pay yourself at least $70,000 of gross W-2 wages from that S corporation for tax year 2025, you can contribute that entire $70,000 to the solo 401k as a voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution and convert it to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA. And of course, you won't be able to make any employee or employer contributions because you will have already exhausted the overall $70,000 415 limit to the solo 401k and the voluntary after-tax side. So in short, not only can you contribute to multiple 401k plans, but you can also not make employee and employer contributions to the solo 401k and solely make voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. So As far as, I think you're talking about the auto contribution credit, Form 8881. So no, you're not required. So we'll talk more about the auto contribution credit, but the auto contribution credit has no impact regarding your any contribution. As a matter of fact, as you'll see here in a little bit, once we delve deeper into the auto contribution credit, you can still utilize the auto contribution credit and not make any contributions. So you can opt out of contributing, and you can still contribute up to the overall limit or under the overall limit. Let me see here if we have. Looks like you have a follow-up question here on that. I think I may have already answered it though. Can I just contribute the 70,000 to the voluntary after tax? That's exactly right. And forego making employee and employer contributions. 8841 credit. I'm not familiar with the 8841 credit. I'm familiar with the auto contribution credit. I'm not quite sure what the 8841 credit is, but solo 401k plans, again, I'm going to touch on that more here in a little bit, do allow for the auto contribution credit, which is a $1,500 auto contribution credit, which reduces your tax, which reduces the cost of having a solo 401k plan. Give me a moment here while I get back here to my slides here. Oh, thanks for the feedback. Yes, we put on these webinars again, as I mentioned earlier, at least once a day, oftentimes twice a day, and we answer all kinds of questions, whether you're an existing client, prospective client, or just a nerd in the industry that wants to learn. We're pretty nerdy about solo 401k plans here as well. It's what we pretty much breathe and sleep. So, and we've been at it since 2009, actually. Let's see here. Here's a question. Can I leave my money in the voluntary after-tax account? Why do I need to roll it over into a personal Roth IRA? That's a great question. So keep in mind that the purpose of the voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions, and don't confuse voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions with Roth IRA contributions, because Roth IRA contributions are also made on an after-tax basis, meaning you don't get a tax deduction in the year that you make the contribution. But voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions are different. Yes, you do not get a deduction when you make the contribution. However, the voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution is a strategy where you use it to get more Roth solo 401k funds into your planning directly above the annual Roth solo 401k contribution limits. For example, for tax year 2025, the overall Roth solo 401k employee contribution limit is $23,500. Well, many self-employed individuals want to get more Roth solo 401k money into their plan. That's where the voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution comes into play. Let me pull up a slide on that. And that's why you hear the mega backdoor Roth solo 401k strategy. So when you make that voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution, you want to convert that immediately to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA so that there are little earnings on those voluntary after-tax funds. Because if you don't convert those voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth IRA or the Roth solo 401k, those earnings are going to accumulate. And then later on, if you convert the voluntary after-tax basis and those earnings over to the Roth solo 401k, now you're going to have to pay taxes on those earnings. The basis won't be taxable, but the earnings will when you convert those over to the Roth Solo 401k or the Roth IRA. So here's an example of a one participant plan. The individual can choose to make voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. As I touched on earlier, they can solely make voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions, or they can make a combination of the three. That is pre-tax, Roth, and voluntary after-tax. But whenever you make a voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution, you can actually contribute all the way up to the overall limit, which is $70,000 for tax year 2025. And you can make those here in 2026, even if you have not yet opened the solo 401k plan and you had enough earned income self-employment activity in 2025 to support that contribution. So let's say, for example, you solely want to make voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions for tax year 2025. So you open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 because the regulations allow you to still open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 and make tax year 2025 contributions. And let's say you make a $23,500 contribution. Let's say your business is a sole proprietorship. So you make a $23,500 contribution for tax year 2025 by April 15 of 2026, because you opened the plan for the first time here in 2026. And then the difference up to the overall limit can go into the voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution, and then you can turn around and convert those voluntary after-tax funds to the Roth Solo 401k, and now you end up with $70,000 of Roth Solo 401k funds. That was an example of making employee contributions and voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. You can also forego making employee contributions and solely just contribute the overall limit of $70,000 for tax year 2025 to that voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket, and then convert it to the Roth Solo 401k or the Roth IRA. And you're going to want to convert that immediately so that there are little gains, because just the gains will be taxable, but the basis will not be taxable. And then here at my solo 401k financial, we are the ones that would issue that form 1099-R to report that conversion, not the actual institution holding the money. So as I mentioned earlier, many of our clients use Fidelity, Schwab, their local bank, credit union to hold their solo 401k funds. So my solo 401k is the plan document provider and the compliance reporter and the compliance provider. So we would issue the form 1099-R after you complete our online conversion form, so that we collect the necessary information to issue that form 1099-R to report that mega backdoor Roth conversion to the government. So hopefully that answers your question as to why you do not want to leave the funds in that voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket, because you want to get those funds into that Roth Solo 401k so you can invest those funds immediately. And now all those gains in that Roth Solo 401k bucket are going to grow tax-free, whereas they do not grow tax-free in the voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket. Okay, let's see if we have some more questions here. Here's a question. Can I open a plan for my self-employment business where I get paid as an individual 1099 under my name and social and contribute for my 2025 income to the plan? Yes, you can. Let's transition to today's topic where we're covering that. Let's see here. So again, today's topic is how can you still open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 and still make employer contributions? But your question, the good news is that since your business is a sole proprietorship effectively, you're going to base contributions to the solo 401k plan on your Schedule C. If I can get to that slide, give me a moment here. My slides are all shuffled. So here's the sole proprietorship. So since you're effectively receiving 1099 NEC income, so you're a consultant, you are essentially a sole proprietor. So as long as you don't employ any non-owner full-time W-2 employees in your business, so your sole proprietorship, then you can open a solo 401k plan. You also need to make sure you don't own any other businesses that employ any full-time W-2 employees. So you have to look at all your self-employed businesses. So assuming that your only source of self-employment income is just that 1099 income, and you don't have any other businesses, then the good news is that since you're effectively considered a sole proprietorship for solo 401k eligibility reasons, you're actually going to be able to open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 and make tax year 2025 contributions, not only employer contributions, but also employee contributions, as well as voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. And this is one of the advantages about your business being a sole proprietorship or an LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship. That is that you have extra time to both open the solo 401k plan for the previous year and make employee contributions. This same rule is not afforded to S corporations, partnerships, or LLCs taxed as an S corp, as a partnership, or even C corporations. Is only afforded to sole proprietorships, and that's stemming from the passage of Secure Act 2.0, where it greatly changed the solo 401k set of deadlines, and it actually made it more advantageous for sole proprietorships. So when your business is a sole proprietorship, so you're basically a contractor, you're going to be able to make employee contributions in 2026 for tax year 2025 by April 15 if you open that solo 401k plan by April 15 of 2026. Of course, for those who already have a solo 401k plan, or those who open the solo 401k plan by December 31st of 2025, you also have until April 15 of 2026 to make those tax year 2025 employee contributions. And if you file for a personal Form 1040 extension, you'll have until October 15 of 2026 to make those year 2025 employee contributions. But for those who are opening the solo 401k plan for the first time here in 2026, and if your business is a sole proprietorship and you want to make employee contributions, you have to open the solo 401k and make the employee contribution for tax year 2025 here in 2026. Now, if you want to be able to make employer contributions and voluntary after-tax contributions, you can still open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 as well. And you can make employer contributions and voluntary after-tax contributions for tax year 2025. And you can do so by April 15 or October 15 if you file an extension. So by October 15 of 2026, if you're a sole proprietorship, if you open the solo 401k plan after April 15 of 2026, but by October 15 of 2026, and you're a sole proprietorship, you can make both employer profit sharing contributions and voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions for tax year 2025, but not employee contributions. So yes, that should answer your question. Now let's go over some slides here and then we'll come back and look at some more questions. So who does today's webinar applies to? Well, it applies to sole proprietorships, independent contractors, partnerships, S corporations, C corporations. In short, you need to be self-employed. From an eligibility requirement, to open a solo 401k plan, you cannot employ any non-owner full-time W-2 employees who work 1,000 hours or more in any of the businesses under your control. So if you own multiple businesses, you generally have to apply these eligibility rules across all of your self-employed businesses. And if any of your self-employed businesses employ any non-owner full-time W-2 employees, you would not be eligible to open a solo 401k plan if they work 1,000 hours or more in any of your businesses and they're W-2 common law employees. You can always exclude those who are under age 21. You can always exclude contractors in your business. Okay, so those are the eligibility requirements. So again, employee contributions, the plan generally had to be adopted by December 31st of 2025, unless you're self-employed business is a sole proprietorship. The regulations are more lax from a contribution perspective on the employee side for sole proprietorships, as I already explained in the previous slides. But you can still make employer contributions and voluntary after-tax contributions for tax year 2025 if you open a solo 401k plan for the first time here in 2026. So if your self-employed business is taxed as an S corporation and you want to make tax year 2025 employer contributions, for tax year 2025, you need to open that solo 401k plan. So adopt that solo 401k plan by March 15 of 2026 and make that employer profit sharing contribution. If you file an 1120S S corporation tax return extension, you're going to have an extra 6 months. Then you're going to have until March 15 of 2020, until September 15 of 2026 to make tax year 2025 employer profit sharing contributions. Keep in mind that so if your self-employed business is taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation, contributions to the plan will be based on your W-2 wages from your self-employed business. So you're going to have to use box 1 of your W-2, which is the gross wages. You may need to add any amount listed in 12A of that W-2 to that box 1 of the W-2, so that way you don't under contribute. If you don't have any W-2 wages from your self-employed business, you cannot contribute to the solo 401k plan. You won't be able to make any employer profit sharing contributions. They're all based on, all contribution types are based on your W-2 wages when your self-employed business is taxed as an S corporation or C corporation. We talked about the sole proprietorship contribution deadline already. So if you want to make employer contributions, you need to open that solo 401k plan by April 15 of 2026 and make those employer profit sharing contributions. If you file a personal business tax return extension, you're going to have an extra 6 months. So until October 15 of 2026 to open that solo 401k plan and make tax year 2025 employer profit sharing contributions. When your business is taxed as a sole proprietorship or you're a contractor, the starting figure for that solo 401k contribution of any type, including employer profit sharing contributions, will be line 31 of that Schedule C, which is the net self-employment income line. And then you subtract 1/2 of self-employment income tax from that figure, and then you multiply that times 20%, and that is your employer profit sharing contribution amount. So in short, it takes earned income from self-employment activity to make any type of contribution to the solo 401k, including employer profit sharing contributions. If your self-employed business is taxed as a partnership or LLC taxed as a partnership, then just like an S corporation, you can open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 by March 15 of 2026, and you're going to be able to make employer profit sharing contributions for tax year 2025. If you file the Form 1065 extension, then you're going to have an extra 6 months. You're going to have until September 15 of 2026 to both open the solo 401k plan and make those employer profit sharing contributions for tax year 2025. So with the partnership, the earned income line is going to be based on line 14. It's titled self-employment income. So you need to look at your Schedule K1 for tax year 2025, and you need to review line 14, and it needs to have a code A. So there needs to be a figure listed on that line 14 with the code A, and that's the starting figure for the calculation contributions to the solo 401k, all types, So employer contributions, you would subtract 1/2 of self-employment income tax from that line 14 code A of the Schedule K1, and then multiply that times 20%. And that would be your maximum employer profit sharing contribution for tax year 2025. If you don't have any line 14 code A Schedule K1 income reported on that line, you cannot make any contribution to the plan. So you will not be able to make any employer profit sharing contributions to the plan for tax year 2025. So the contribution limits for tax year 2025, they're $70,000. That's the overall limit. You've got the catch-up contribution of $7,500. You've got the super catch-up contribution of $11,250 for those who are ages 60, 61, 62, or 63. But again, you probably will not qualify to make any catch-up contributions or employee contributions if you did not open that solo 401k plan by December 31st of 2025, unless you're a sole proprietorship, then you have until April 15. So some common mistakes to avoid is assuming that employee contributions are still allowed. We talked about how they're only allowed for sole proprietorships if you did not open a solo 401k plan by December 31st of 2025. And also making sure that you file an extension if you want to be able to make employer contributions by the business tax return due date, plus timely file extension, as well as open the solo 401k plan. And using plans that don't allow for late adoption. Some institutions out there, even though the statutory IRS rules do allow you to open a solo 401k plan here in 2026 and make certain types of tax year 2025 contributions, some financial institutions out there are not well versed on the regulations. So they just take a blanket approach and say you cannot make any type of tax year 2025 contributions if you open the plan in 2026. So if this information is helping you feel more secure about your future, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us get the word out to other solopreneurs like you. And also you'll receive notifications as to when we go live. Let's take a look at some questions here. Here's a question here. Since I'm over 50, would I be eligible to contribute $77,500 to the after-tax account for 2025? Good question. And the answer is no. And I'm glad you asked that question, because voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions, they only allow for the overall limit of $70,000. They don't allow for catch-up contributions. You can never make any type of catch-up contribution to the voluntary after-tax solo 401k. So you would only qualify for tax year 2025, you can only make $70,000 as voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. The catch-up contributions can never be deposited to the voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket. That's a very important distinction there. So I'm glad you asked that question. Here's a question. Is it better to convert into the Roth 401k or a personal Roth IRA? It used to be the clients preferred to convert the voluntary after-tax solo 401k to a Roth IRA, but not anymore. Most clients now convert it to the Roth solo 401k. It used to be that Roth solo 401k plans were subject to required minimum distributions, which are distributions that must begin from a 401k once the individual reaches age 73. Well, Secure Act 1.0 and Secure Act 2.0 solidify that require minimum distributions no longer apply to Roth solo 401k plans. As a result, we find most clients will convert the voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution to the Roth solo 401k, because the solo 401k is oftentimes used to consolidate other retirement accounts under one umbrella. And also you can take a participant loan from the solo 401k plan. You can now borrow from an IRA, including a Roth IRA. Also, a lot of clients like to invest in physical real estate where the solo 401k owns the property. and they like to utilize debt financing and a non-recourse loan where the solo 401k obtains a loan from a hard money lender or a bank that loans money to the solo 401k plan for investing in real estate. When you utilize that type of financing with the solo 401k, that does not trigger what's referred to as unrelated debt finance income tax. That tax does apply to Roth IRAs or any type of IRA that utilizes borrowed funds and non-recourse loans to invest in real estate. And it's oftentimes a high tax rate. It's generally about 38%. So those are the main reasons individuals choose to instead convert to the Roth Solo 401k. But our motto here at my Solo 401k Financial, however, is that it's your retirement account, it's your funds. So you can convert to the Roth Solo 401k or the Roth IRA. So if the statutory regulations allow for it, we let you convert to the Roth Solo 401k or the Roth IRA. That's why we let you choose where to hold your funds at, so it's fully self-directed. You can invest in alternative investments. You can also perform the mega backdoor Roth and so forth. So again, opening a solo 401k in 2026 may still help you for 2025. That is, you can make tax year 2025 contributions. Specifically, you can make employer profit sharing contributions and voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions, whether your business is a sole proprietorship, S Corp, C Corp partnership. So the deadlines matter, and you can open the plan here in 2026 and contribute for tax year 2025. Let's take a look at some more questions here. Okay, looks like this is a good question that transitions to the $1,500 auto contribution credit, which I'm going to cover now. So let's see what your question here is. The $1,500 auto contribution credit, would I get full $500 per year for 3 years, even though the cost to maintain the plan is only $125 a year? Yes, that's exactly right. As long as you remain self-employed, you'll be able to claim that $500 credit each year, regardless if your fees to have the plan are lower than $500 a year. So you absolutely can. Let me transition over to those auto contribution slides. Here we go. So what's the auto contribution credit? Now, don't confuse the auto contribution credit with the tax credit. The auto contribution credit applies to solo 401k plans where the tax credit does not. So the auto contribution credit is a dollar for dollar credit. It's a total of $1,500 broken down into $500 increments over a 3-year period. In order to qualify for the $1,500 auto contribution credit, you need to open a solo 401k plan with a plan document provider like my solo 401k Financial, who has the auto contribution credit and the applicable schedules built into the plan. We were actually the first ones in the industry to offer a plan with the auto contribution credit all the way back to the end of December of 2023. So here at my solo 401k Financial, we tend to be the leaders in the space with regards to not only educating the public, but also making sure that we provide all the available features that are available under the IRS regulations. We were also the first ones to offer the mega backdoor Roth inside a solo 401k plan starting in 2013. So now we've seen more companies start offering the auto contribution credit in their plans. So that's great from an industry perspective that people are now getting on board. However, traditional brokerage firms like Fidelity, Schwab, E-Trades of the world, Chase, Wells Fargo, T. Rowe Price, they do not offer a solo 401k plan yet that has the auto contribution credit built into it. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll finally come around to it. So so it's a dollar for dollar credit, which means it reduces your taxable income on the business side at a dollar for dollar basis. So it's better than a business expense. And again, this $1,500 auto contribution credit is going to cover both the cost of opening a solo 401k plan and maintaining the solo 401k plan for years to come. Once this auto contribution credit is added to your plan, so we automatically include the auto contribution credit for plans that were open starting January 1st of 2024 and after. So if you're an existing solo 401k client prior to December 31st of 2024, we can add, excuse me, it's December 31st of 2023, I should say. We can add this auto contribution credit to your plan. So that way you qualify. So it's available to both new clients and existing clients, but we just need to add it to the existing plan if you're an existing client from that time period and prior. And if you're an existing client, you can submit a support ticket through our website and we'll go ahead and add that feature to your plan. Now, what's great about the auto contribution credit is that, again, the IRS put this credit together to help individuals save for retirement. They're trying to push the self-employed to save for retirement as we have a retirement crisis in this country, especially with Social Security. So this will help you to push you into opening a solo 401k plan. And you're not required to make contributions to the solo 401k plan to qualify. Yes, you heard that right. You simply need to have a solo 401k plan that has the feature built into the plan along with the applicable schedules. And you can opt out of contributing, and you're still going to be able to contribute to the solo 401k plan in whichever amount you want up to the overall limit. So it's a win-win situation. You're going to file Form 8881 each year. So a total of 3 times. Because again, that $1,500 credit is broken down into 3 separate parts. So 3 separate chunks. So if you open the plan here in 2026, you would qualify for that $500 credit starting in 2026. You would file Form 8881 to claim that $500 credit. For 2027 tax year, you would file a second Form 8881 to claim the second $500 credit. And of course, for tax year 2028, you would file a final Form 8881 to claim that $500 credit for a total of $1,500. We have a video and a PowerPoint walkthrough that we can provide on that auto contribution credit as far as filing that Form 8881. It's a 2-page form. There's only a small section that needs to be filled out. It also needs to be recorded on your business tax return. So that's how the auto contribution works. Okay, let's see here. If we have some other questions. Is this video recorded for reference and review? Yes, good question. We actually publish all our webinars on our YouTube channel. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. Like us across all the different platforms, social platforms. Visit our My Community, which is www.mysolo401k.net/my community, where we have over 32,000 members. It's free to join. You can post forums. You can even create your own blog posts and publish them out there on the community and link them back to your company's website. That's especially handy for those who are financial professionals that have services to offer. The 32,000 plus eyeballs will be able to review your services, and they may even reach out for your services. So looks like we're coming to the end of our time here. We've been on for almost an hour. I think that about does it. Let's just conclude here with this final slide. So as I touched on earlier, here at my Solo 401k Financial, we are solo 401k plan document providers and provide compliance support for our clients. So when you open a solo 401k with my Solo 401k Financial, our annual fee will cover the fee for being the plan document provider. And we also handle the IRS plan updates. That's the main reason for the fee. But in that same fee, we'll cover any type of Form 1099-R and Form 5500 easy preparation and filing as long as you timely request it. So we don't charge additional fees for that service. So we don't have access to your funds. So you need to make sure you let us know when you need that service. So Form 1099-R, we would file that electronically with the government. That Form 1099-R applies when you process a distribution, like a required minimum distribution from the solo 401k plan, or if you process a conversion, whether you convert pre-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k, or you perform the mega backdoor Roth solo 401k, where you convert voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA. The Form 5500 easy applies once the market value of that plan is greater than $250,000 as of the end of the plan year. For example, if the market value of your solo 401k plan is greater than $250,000 in value as of December 31st of 2025, a Form 5500 easy needs to be filed by July 31st of this year, 2026. So you need to make sure you let us know so that we can prepare that form for you at no additional cost, and we'll file that with the government for you. And of course, we consult on the rules and regulations and so forth. Well, that's it for today's solo 401k session. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. Your time is valuable, but we think that your retirement future is worth it. So if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe so that we can keep building this community. We'll be back here again, actually, today in a couple hours with another live session. And then we'll be back here again next week as well. So until next time, have a great rest of the day.